She was standing in my kitchen, the kitchen I had remodeled twice, the one with the tile backsplash I'd picked out myself from a store in Savannah, and she told me, without looking up from her phone, that I needed to scale back. That was the word she used, scale back, like I was a business plan that had gotten too ambitious. My son was sitting right there at the table. He didn't say a word. I was 63 years old. I had worked 31 years as a registered nurse at Memorial Health in Savannah, Georgia. I had buried my husband, raised my son alone after his father passed, put money into a savings account every single month since 1987, even when there wasn't much of it. I had done everything right, everything they tell you to do, and I was standing in my own kitchen being told by a 31-year-old woman who had never worked a full year in her life that I needed to scale back. I smiled. I said, "Of course, honey," and I drove home. I did not cry until I got to the interstate. Her name was Tanya. She had married my son Adrian 4 years earlier in a ceremony I had paid for. Not all of it, but enough. The catering, the flowers, the photographer who charged more per hour than I made as a nurse. I had written those checks happily because I loved my son and I wanted him to have a good start. I thought that was what mothers did. What I did not understand yet was that for Tanya, a good start was just the beginning. Adrian was an engineer at a logistics firm outside of Atlanta. He made good money, real money, the kind I never made in nursing. Tanya did some freelance graphic design, maybe 10, 15 hours a week, which she described to people as running her own studio. Together, they should have been more than fine. But fine was never the point for Tanya. She wanted the house and the gated community in Alpharetta. She wanted the SUV with the third row and the panoramic roof. She wanted the vacations to Tulum and Portugal and Scottsdale. She wanted Adrian in a certain kind of suit and her daughter in a certain kind of preschool that cost more per month than my first mortgage payment. And somehow, over 4 years, the gap between what they wanted and what they could actually afford had been quietly, steadily filled by me. It didn't happen all at once. That's the thing nobody tells you. It starts small. It starts with your son calling and saying they're a little short this month. Could you cover the car payment? Just this once. And you do it because you love him and because you have it and because it's just this once. Except it's never just once. The car payment became a habit before I noticed it was one. Then it was the insurance on both vehicles because Tanya's studio wasn't bringing in enough to justify what she was spending on Adobe subscriptions and equipment. Then it was the preschool tuition for my granddaughter Leah because the public option was not the right environment. Then it was the HOA fees, then half the mortgage one month when something came up. I was never told exactly what. Then groceries, then a medical bill, then a credit card balance that Tanya mentioned in passing like it was my responsibility to fix it. I kept a notebook, not because I suspected anything. I kept it because I was a nurse for 30 years and nurses keep notes. It's just what I do. By the time I was sitting in my kitchen that evening after Tanya told me to scale back, I had made 89 separate transfers to my son's account. I had paid 14 bills directly: the car, the insurance, the preschool, the HOA, on auto pay from my own checking account. I had written 11 personal checks for things that were described to me as emergencies. 114 payments. 114 times I had said yes. I drove home that night, and I opened my notebook at the kitchen table and I counted. Then I counted again because I didn't believe the number the first time. 114. I sat with that number for a long time. The thing that got me wasn't even the money, not exactly. I had enough. I was not going to lose my house or miss my own bills. The thing that got me was the kitchen. The way she'd said it, scale back, without looking up, like I was overhead, like I was a line item in a budget she was optimizing, not a person who had given up the retirement trip to Ireland I had been planning since my husband died, because that month Adrian had called and said they were in a tight spot. I had cancelled that trip 3 years ago and never rescheduled it. I thought about that trip a lot on the drive home. I did not make any decisions that night. I have learned at 63 that decisions made in the dark when you are hurt almost always need to be revisited in the morning. So I made myself a cup of chamomile tea, and I sat in the living room and I looked at the photographs on my mantel. Adrian at his high school graduation, Adrian at his college graduation, Adrian and Tanya on their wedding day, Leah as a newborn, and I let myself feel everything. The grief, the anger, the embarrassment, because there was embarrassment in there too. I had let this happen. I had handed over the scissors every single time. In the morning, I called my friend Beverly, who has known me since we worked together at Memorial in the 90s. Beverly is direct in the way that only a woman who has survived 2 divorces and a breast cancer diagnosis can be. I told her everything, not a version of it. Everything, not a version of it. Everything. The notebook, the number, the kitchen, all of it. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Sylvia, how long have you been doing this? My name. My name is Sylvia. That's not what she called me. She called me by the nickname she's used for 30 years. But the weight in her voice was the same regardless. She was asking how I had gotten here without noticing. I said I didn't know. She said, Yes, you do. And she was right. I did know. I had let it happen because every time I said no, even when I tried to say no, Adrian would get quiet in that way he'd had since he was a boy. The silence that meant I had failed him somehow. I had spent his entire childhood terrified of that silence. Terrified he would grow up feeling the lack of his father, feeling the lean years we had in the late 90s when the hospital had layoffs and I was working agency shifts to keep the lights on. I had overcorrected for a poverty that had ended 20 years ago. Tanya had figured that out. I don't know if she did it consciously, but she had. Beverly told me to call an attorney, not because I was planning to sue anyone, but because she said I needed to understand what I had done legally, whether any of those payments could be characterized as loans, whether there was anything in writing. She has a practical mind, Beverly does. I called my attorney the next week. I won't share what he said in specific terms because every situation is different, but what I took from the conversation was this. Everything I had given was a gift. I had no legal claim to it, which meant the only thing I had was my own future. I went home and I opened my laptop and I looked at my accounts for the first time in a long time with completely clear eyes. Not the way you look at them quickly to check that nothing looks wrong, the way you look at them when you're making a decision. I had given away over 4 years an amount that I will not name precisely, but it was substantial. It was the island trip and 2 more like it. It was the sunroom I had always wanted to add to the back of my house. It was 2 years of the retirement I had been told I could take at 65 if I was careful. I sat with that for a long time too. I did not call Adrian that night. I did not call the next night either. I had learned from a lifetime in emergency nursing that when you are about to do something significant, you wait until you are certain. You do not act on adrenaline. You act when your hands are steady. My hands became steady on a Tuesday morning in November. I sat at my kitchen table with my coffee and my laptop, and I went through every automatic payment that originated from my accounts. The car payment, the other car payment, the insurance bundle I had added, both their vehicles to 3 years ago, the preschool tuition that drafted on the first of every month, the HOA fee, the streaming services I was paying for that I did not use because I don't watch what they watch, the gym membership that was technically in my name because Tanya had put it there when she signed up and needed a credit card on file. I removed every single one. Not in anger. I want to be clear about that. I was not shaking. I was not crying. I felt the way I used to feel at the end of a very long shift when the last patient had been discharged and the charts were done, and I could finally sit down, quiet, resolved, like something that had been running too long had finally been switched off. I called the car lender directly and removed my account from the payment arrangement. I called the insurance company and separated the policies. I called the preschool billing office and let them know that effective the following month, billing should go directly to the parent account they had on file. Each call took less than 10 minutes. I was polite. I gave no explanations. I was not required to. By noon, I had undone 4 years of arrangements in a single morning. I went for a walk after that. I live in a neighborhood with old live oak trees that arch over the sidewalk, and when you walk under them in November, the light comes through in a way that makes everything look a little softer. I walked for almost an hour. I thought about my husband, who died when Adrian was 11, who would have handled all of this very differently and probably sooner. I thought about the years I had spent trying to be both parents at once, and how that had quietly become something else without my realizing it. I thought about Leah, my granddaughter. She was 4 years old, and she had nothing to do with any of this, and I loved her fiercely, and that had not changed and would not change. Adrian called on a Thursday, 11 days later. He did not call to ask how I was. He called because the car payment had bounced. His voice had that tight, careful quality it gets when he is trying not to show that he is upset. He said there must have been some kind of mistake. He said the payment hadn't gone through and he'd gotten a notification. I said it wasn't a mistake. He was quiet for a moment. What do you mean it wasn't a mistake? I said I had removed my account from the payment. Another silence, longer this time. Then, Mum, what is going on? I told him, not in a heated way. I had practiced what I wanted to say, not word for word, but the shape of it. I told him that I had been making 114 payments over the past 4 years, that I had been doing it quietly and without complaint because I loved him, but that I had been told in my own kitchen that I needed to scale back and that I had decided to take that advice. I told him that going forward, I would not be paying for anything that he and Tanya were capable of paying for themselves. He said, Tanya didn't mean it like that. I said I understood. He said, this is going to cause real problems for us. I said I understood that too. He said, Mom. I said, Adrian, I love you. I'm not going to stop loving you. But I worked for 31 years and I gave a significant portion of what I saved to support a lifestyle that I was not asked to participate in, only to fund. I'm 63 years old and I would like to take my trip to Ireland. He didn't say anything for a while. Then he said, I didn't know about Ireland. I said, I know you didn't. That was the hardest part of the whole conversation. Not because he was cruel, because he wasn't. He genuinely hadn't known, which told me something about how invisible I had made myself in the process of trying to take care of him. The weeks that followed were not clean or easy. I had not expected them to be. Tanya called once, a conversation I will not recount in detail because it became unproductive quickly, and I ended it. There were several text messages from Adrian that ranged from hurt to angry to something that looked, when I read them late at night, very much like grief. I responded to the ones that were civil. I did not respond to the ones that were not. I found out later, through a conversation with Adrian that came weeks after, a real conversation, the kind we hadn't had in years, that they had been living about 40% beyond what their income could actually support. I had been covering that gap so seamlessly, so quietly, for so long that neither of them had ever truly reckoned with it. When I stepped back, the gap became visible overnight. They had to make decisions that adults make. The SUV went back. The preschool changed. The Tulum trip they had half planned for spring did not happen. These are not things I feel good about in any simple way. Leah had to adjust to a new school, and that troubled me. But I also knew, in the part of me that had spent a career making hard calls at 3 in the morning, that soft landings made from borrowed money are not landings at all. I booked the Ireland trip in February. 14 days. Dublin, the Wild Atlantic Way, County Kerry. I stayed in a small hotel in Dingle that had a fireplace in the sitting room and served brown bread with every meal. And I walked along the coast in the mornings with the wind coming off the Atlantic, and I thought about my husband, and I thought about my son, and I cried exactly once. On the third morning, standing on a cliff above the sea, and then I did not cry again. It was the best trip I have ever taken in my life. When I came home, Adrian called. He asked how it was. I told him it was beautiful. He said he was glad. And then, after a pause, he said he was sorry. Not for one specific thing. just sorry. The way you say it when you mean the whole shape of something. I told him I loved him. I told him I was proud of the man he was capable of being. And I meant both of those things completely. He has been different since then. Not perfect, but different. He called on my birthday without being reminded. He drove up from Atlanta with Leah on a Sunday in April just to have lunch. No occasion, no ask. He's started to talk to me again the way he used to talk to me when he was young, like I am a person he respects, not a resource he manages. Tanya and I are cordial. I do not expect more than that, and I do not need more than that. Leah calls me Nana, and she is the most wonderful child, and I refuse to let what happened between the adults in this family take 1 minute of joy from what she and I have together. I still keep my notebook. Old habits. But the pages I've added this year are different. They have the Ireland receipts tucked into the back, and the name of the hotel in Dingle written on the inside cover in my own handwriting. I do not regret a single call I made on that Tuesday morning in November. Not one. There is a moment I keep coming back to. Not the kitchen, not Tanya's voice, not even the Tuesday morning when I sat at my laptop and undid 4 years of arrangements in a single hour. The moment I keep returning to is standing on that cliff in County Kerry, wind off the Atlantic, thinking about how close I had come to never being there at all. Not because of money, because I had gradually, quietly stopped believing my own life deserved to be lived. That is what nobody talks about when they tell these stories. The financial part is real and it matters, but underneath it is something harder to name. The way you can give and give until the giving is no longer a choice, until it has become your identity, until the day someone tells you to scale back and some part of you almost agrees with them. I think about the cause and the effect of all of it now. Clearly, the way you can only see a road you've already traveled. Every time I handed over money without question, I was teaching the people around me something. I was teaching them that I had no limit, that my comfort was negotiable, that my silence meant consent. Those lessons compounded over 4 years the same way interest compounds in a savings account, quietly, invisibly, until the balance is something you don't recognize. And Adrian, my son, he is not a villain in this story, and I have never thought of him as one. But I raised him with so much padding against hardship that he never developed the muscle you need to carry your own weight. That was my doing as much as anything else. Every parent who has ever overcorrected for their own difficult years will understand what I mean. The intention was love. The result was something else. The effect followed the cause with a precision that, looking back, should not have surprised me. What saved me, and I mean that plainly, without drama, was three things working together in a way I didn't fully understand until later. The first was honesty, not bravery, just the willingness to open my notebook, count to 114, and look at the number without flinching. That is a harder thing than it sounds. Most of us know the truth of our situation long before we're willing to see it. The second was the capacity to think clearly when everything in me wanted to react emotionally, to wait until Tuesday morning when my hands were steady, to call my attorney before I acted, to understand that a decision made from hurt is a different thing entirely from a decision made from clarity. I had spent 31 years in a profession that demanded that distinction, and I am grateful now that the habit stayed with me. The third was simply the refusal to quit on myself, to book the trip, to walk the cliff, to believe that 63 was not too late to reclaim something I had set down without meaning to. I still keep in touch with Beverly. I had lunch with Leah last Sunday. Adrian called me on my birthday and we talked for almost an hour. The payments are gone. The life is still here. That is the whole of it.